Hey, what's up guys, Grace here, back with Anthem as promised, and of course today we have the video review of the Cataclysm update, or well, what we currently experience on the public test server. Many of you guys have tuned in the live stream a couple of days back, and since then have asked me to make a video review of what I have experienced in my time playing the new content. So here it is today. There are many questions being thrown around. Is the update actually good? Does it make the game any better? How is the loot even? And generally speaking, what can we expect to find in it? So in today's video I'm going to go over everything I have experienced, the new events, the new features, the new boss, loot, and generally just give my opinion about it all. So I hope you guys are ready. If you are, a thumbs up and a subscribe would be super appreciated, and let's get to it. Now, to make the transition to the review easier, I'm going to start with a general overview of everything that you can find currently on the PTS. This of course includes the main Cataclysm event, which can be encountered both on the brand new map as well as in the free play mode. Then there's 3 main quests that players can access, continuing the story after we have defeated the Monitor, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on in it. I'm going to talk about it in just a little bit, and of course finally we also have the brand new boss, some new events, some new mechanics, a few new enemy types, and a number of new items and changes along the way. And I will start with the Cataclysm map first because this is probably the biggest addition, the most important one, and the one that managed to garner the most amount of, let's say, controversy in the past week or so. Many players were left quite unimpressed with how the Cataclysm affects the environment. There's only like slightly stronger winds than usual, some high waves here and there, and this blue hue all around the screen, which doesn't look nearly as menacing as it did in the old trailers and how it was portrayed back in 2017. With that in mind, we do have to take into account the fact that this is most probably because what we are currently experiencing on the PTS is just the pre-event. Looking at the sky, you can even see the storm has not yet fully formed, and the clouds are only now beginning to shape into a spiral of sorts. So this is all expected to intensify once we transition to the full Cataclysm, though expect to see still quite a departure from the old trailers, and it's probably going to be significantly different than back then. Now, gameplay wise, of course, back before Anthem even launched, BioWare did describe these new events as being more complex than regular sized strongholds, though still not fully blown raids, and it definitely feels that way. In more technical terms, this new map is a time trial slash event based super dungeon of sorts, which unlike regular strongholds is not confined to an inside area, it doesn't feature a linear path to the end boss, and in fact it's much larger, it's opened with a lot more objectives on it and paths you can take towards the end boss, and of course more rewards along the way as a consequence. This is most noticeable by the fact that there are multiple arenas on the map which are more difficult than regular encounters and will require a higher degree of team coordination and skill, though nothing over the top. Each one of them has a different puzzle, so this should in theory offer a higher level of diversity, even though the objective is pretty much the same in all cases, as in defeating all of the enemies, completing the objective or the puzzle, and then destroying the crystals so you can stabilize the Cataclysm a little bit. On top of this, the map also features hidden areas, which means that in order to maximize your score, you will need to experiment and find the best routes possible before moving on to the end boss. Generally speaking, the map does feel more rewarding, or at the very least more efficient than anything I've seen so far in the game. The drop rate seems to be about the same as it is on the live servers, even with the luck stat removal, but now you get access to a lot more loot chests in way less time. There's no filler encounters or areas you need to clear before reaching these events. You simply go from one arena to another, conquer it, and get the loot, and that is pretty much it. And on top of this, there's also the points that you can score, which you can later use in the fort to purchase additional loot, which comes in the form of these war chests. Now, unfortunately, I was not able to test these new war chests as the vendor that sells them is currently disabled, so I can't really say for sure how rewarding these will be, but I will keep you guys updated on that one. Moving forward, on the same map, the main boss over here is obviously named Vera. If you have completed the main story missions, you will find out more about her and everything will make sense, your presence over there, why things are happening the way they do, and so on. But she was affected by the Cataclysm in the same way the monitor was, which is why she looks so similar. The encounter is not yet fully finalized, there's still some bugs in it, some missing attacks, and a lot of stuff that still needs to be implemented, but for now she uses quite a number of attacks. She even seems to be more complex than the monitor and definitely more powerful. I mean, she has a one-shot mechanic that can pretty much destroy you if you're not being careful. There's also some pillars inside the arena that you can use in order to avoid damage, but she does have a tracking ability where she summons explosions at your location, so you need to be careful with that. She doesn't drop loot currently, so I really hope that is a bug and is going to get changed soon enough, but she does double your current score. So the way you want to do this entire map is to complete as many of these arenas as possible, increase that score count as high as possible, including the multiplier, and only then complete the final boss, as she will double your current amount. And obviously this means you will be able to purchase more items and more loot chests at the vendor in Fort Tarsis. Now moving on, as I was saying, the Cataclysm is also present in the free play as it was in the open demo. You still have the sky effect, though it seems that it's going to go through different stages as the Cataclysm intensifies, with this one being significantly different from the first one we had in the demo when it was first shown. So instead of the fire effects, we have now something that kinda looks similar to what we had in the trailers, except it's from the distance, so you're not right up in it. The map is also now filled at every corner with brand new enemies and events. At this stage it's mostly elementals, but regular events can still spawn, including the ones with the scars, the minions and the outlaws. And I have also encountered a new type of Ursix called the Bristleback. I really like this one. It's way more powerful than the regular Ursix, and obviously it can use its crystal spikes to pretty much damage you from afar. Since this is just a pre-event, I'm assuming that later on the map will eventually feature even bigger and more menacing enemies, such as Titans, as it was in the open demo. Now the main addition over here comes in the form of these new conjunctions, and these are probably the closest you will see to what was shown back in the old trailers in 2017. Of course, the winds are not as strong as it was before, but it still features the same big ball of light that expands when it's ready for you to go inside of it, which many players would be interested in because it's basically kinda like a horde mode, so to speak, with multiple waves, and each new waves features increasingly more difficult enemies as well as better rewards. So if initially you just fight with regular Dominion, eventually there's going to be Titan spawning as well as these new Bristlebacks on top of other stuff that is going to be in there as well. Completing one level rewards loot chests, and again, since these are the same as the ones inside strongholds and take less time to get, it means that you're going to be more efficient at getting loot, even though the drop rate appears to remain unchanged. Moving on to the story itself, as I've said earlier, there is also additional story content and a reason behind everything that is currently happening with the world of Anthem. The PTS currently features 3 main story missions, which are partly done, and there's some 4th one in the works, but I wasn't able to access this one even though it does appear on my radar. The missions do continue the story following the Monitor's defeat and the Dominion's search for additional power, but that in turn creates the Cataclysm. They're pretty well made, you know, these story missions, lore-wise at the very least, and it features both new characters as well as expanding on currently existing ones. And I already said in the live stream that I really enjoyed the way one of the characters was acted and his overall implication in the story. Generally speaking, yes, the story seems to be a little bit better than how it was previously. In terms of actual mission structure and gameplay, don't expect too much of a difference to the old formula. You still have to go from point A to point B, follow the signal, listen to the background dialogue, and then complete the objective while fighting the enemies that spawn around you. Well, except this time around there's some brand new objectives added in the mix, stuff like, you know, destroying some crystals or disabling a force field, and on one occasion I had to run from a collapsing dungeon or, you know, underground passage. There was a lot of explosions around me. It was pretty nice, but I'm not sure how much BioWare can even play around with these. If you had a gripe with the mission structure before, most probably the new missions will not change your opinion too much. Finally, some of the other stuff that I have noticed which might pique your interest consists in the new items and gear. Now, as I've said, most of the new items are inaccessible because the war chest vendor is himself disabled, but the most exciting change is probably in regards to the new melee weapons, which have now their own gear slot. So you can check the new slot in the weapons category, and on top of the regular guns that you can use, you also now have the melee slot, and it seems that it has its own item that can drop with its stats, its rarity levels, and hopefully some additional effects. Overall, I would say that while the Cataclysm update might not be as impressive as people were expecting, I see quite a lot of potential here still, a lot more than what people are willing to give credit for. The Cataclysm map is rather interesting, it's a little bit fun and challenging, and if they don't screw up the war chests, it can fix a lot of the frustration with the loot that the players currently have. The same applies with the events, both inside the Cataclysm map and in the free play. They feel way more efficient in terms of farming, at least compared to what we currently have in the game. The story also seems decent and in many ways better than before, but again, some of the problems that people have been complaining about for ages now are still in the game. BioWare's approach to loot is still nonsensical in many ways. It still involves a lot of RNG, the drop rate seems to be pretty much unaffected even with the luck changes. There's still a huge need for specialized loot to make bosses feel like they're truly important enemies. The stat screen is still not yet implemented, making min-maxing downright impossible, and the game is still far off from having enough content for a AAA full-priced product. As I've said, it's a long way ahead, and BioWare needs to realize that they need to focus more on player feedback, otherwise risk falling off for good. As I've said, there's some promising stuff in the new update, but also some underlying issues that have existed for a very long time and should have been fixed by now. For now, that is all that I have to say about the update. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, then make sure to leave a like on it. Also subscribe and activate that notification bell if you want to get more of these early, and I will see you guys next time, so peace out.